Welcome to Night Shift Pulse. Comment your city and the time below. The night connects us all. If you enjoy what you hear, please subscribe. Let's step into the dark. Story 1. The Overnight Custodian's Incomplete Checklist. I found the checklist on the break room clipboard at 11:47 p.m., right where the previous shift always left it. My supervisor had explained that completing the list before 6 in the morning meant I was doing my job correctly. The paper was warm from the laminator, edges crisp, items numbered 1 through 43. I initialed the first task at midnight precisely. Empty trash receptacles in the East Wing waiting area. Standard work. The full version started at 11 p.m., 5 nights a week for the past 11 years. I worked alone because the hospital reduced overnight staffing to essential personnel only. My route covered 3 floors, 217 rooms counting storage closets, medication dispensaries, patient bathrooms, and consultation offices. Each task on the checklist corresponded to a location, a procedure, and an estimated completion time. I had memorized the sequence by my second month. Muscle memory guided me through most nights while my mind wandered to mortgage payments and my daughter's college applications. By 1:37 a.m., I had initialed 22 items. The hallways smelled like floor wax and that particular bleach the hospital purchased in bulk. My cart squeaked on the left rear wheel. I had submitted 3 maintenance requests, but the wheel remained unfixed. Small frustrations defined this work. I accepted them as part of the routine. Item 23 directed me to sanitize the 3rd floor nurses' station countertops. I sprayed the surface, wiped it down in overlapping circles, and initialed the box. Item 24 was mop the storage room 3B. I had mopped that room thousands of times. It held surplus office supplies, outdated medical textbooks, and broken equipment awaiting disposal. The door was never locked. I pushed my cart inside, filled my bucket from the utility sink, and completed the task in 11 minutes. I initialed item 24 at 2:03 a.m. Item 25 read disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces and floor. I paused. Isolation room 4F was not part of my usual rotation. The isolation wing had its own dedicated cleaning staff who worked different hours and followed infection control protocols I was not trained to perform. I assumed someone had updated the checklist to redistribute tasks. Budget cuts had been rumored for months. I located room 4F on the 4th floor at the end of a hallway I rarely entered. The door was closed but not locked. I knocked once out of habit, then entered. The room was empty. No bed, no monitors, no IV stands. Just blank walls, a sealed window, and flooring that showed no signs of recent use. I disinfected the surfaces anyway, mopped the floor, and returned to my cart. I initialed item 25 at 2:41 a.m. The next night, I started my shift at 11 p.m. as always. The checklist was waiting on the clipboard. I scanned the items, confirming they matched my memory. Item 25 read, disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces and floor. I looked at my previous night's checklist, still clipped beneath the current one. Item 25 was there, initialed by me at 2:41 a.m. I assumed the new checklist was a duplicate printing error. I completed my tasks in order, skipping item 25 because I had already done it the night before. When I reached item 26, I initialed it and continued. At 5:53 a.m., I reviewed my completed checklist before clocking out. Item 25 was unmarked. I was certain I had skipped it intentionally. I initialed it anyway to avoid questions from my supervisor. The 3rd night, item 25 appeared again. Disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces and floor. I checked the previous 2 checklists. Both showed my initials next to item 25. I walked to room 4F and opened the door. The room was identical to my first visit. Empty, clean, undisturbed. I disinfected it again and initialed the checklist at 2:39 a.m. On the fourth night, I decided to document the situation. I took a photo of the completed checklist with my phone before leaving it on the clipboard. Item 25 was initialed clearly. The timestamp read 6:04 a.m. When I arrived for my shift that evening, I compared the photo to the new checklist. Item 25 was blank on the new list, as expected. But when I looked at the previous night's checklist still clipped underneath, item 25 was also blank. My initials were gone. I checked my phone. The photo still showed my initials next to item 25. I held the physical checklist next to the phone screen. The paper version had no initials. I had initialed it. I had photographic evidence. But the ink had vanished. I completed my tasks in order that night, including item 25. I used a different pen, pressing hard enough to indent the paper. I initialed the box at 2:44 a.m., then immediately took another photo. I clipped the checklist to the board and started item 26. At 3:15 a.m., I returned to the break room. I looked at the checklist. Item 25 was blank. I checked my phone. The photo showed my initials, clear and deliberate. I initialed item 25 again, this time adding the date and time beside my initials. I took another photo, then sat in the break room watching the clipboard from across the room. Nothing changed while I watched. I returned to my tasks. At 4:02 a.m., I checked again. The initials were gone. The date and time were gone. Only the blank box remained. I stopped initializing item 25. If the checklist wanted it blank, I would leave it blank. I completed every other task with meticulous care, but I left item 25 untouched. When I clocked out at 6:07 a.m., I placed the checklist on the clipboard with item 25 conspicuously unmarked. The next night, I examined the previous checklist. Item 25 was initialed. The handwriting looked like mine, but was neater, more controlled. The ink was the same color I used. I compared it to item 24, which I had definitely initialed. The handwriting was nearly identical, but item 25's initials had a precision my tired hand never managed at 2:40 a.m. I decided to test the phenomenon. That night, I completed every task except item 25. I left it blank, clipped the checklist to the board, and clocked out at 6:09 a.m. The following evening, item 25 was initialed. I began leaving item 25 blank every night. Every morning, I found it completed. The initials were always mine, always neat, always placed exactly within the small box beside the task description. 3 weeks into this routine, I noticed a change. Item 25's description had been updated. It now read, "Disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces, floor, and overhead fixtures." I had never cleaned overhead fixtures in that room. There were no fixtures. The ceiling was smooth, unbroken plaster. I walked to room 4F and confirmed. No light fixtures, no vents, no sprinklers, just blank ceiling. I left item 25 blank. The next night, it was initialed. The description changed again 1 week later. Disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces, floor, overhead fixtures, and window interior. The window in room 4F was sealed. It had no interior access panel, no latches, then no way to open it. I had confirmed this on my first visit. I checked again. The window was still sealed. I left item 25 blank. The next night, it was initialed. The following week, the description expanded. Disinfect isolation room 4F surfaces, floor, overhead fixtures, window interior, and subfloor drainage. There was no subfloor drainage in that room. The floor was solid. I checked the hospital's maintenance blueprints during my break. Room 4F was built on a concrete slab foundation. No drainage system existed beneath it. I stopped reading item 25's description. I simply left it blank and continued my work. Each night I found it initialed in my handwriting. Each week the task description grew longer, detailing procedures and areas that did not exist. Last month the checklist changed format. Item 25 was moved to the top of the list, renumbered as Item 1. The description now spans 3 lines of small print. I cannot read all of it because the text blurs when I focus on it. I can make out a few words: disinfect, remove, contain, isolate, repeat. I leave it blank every night. Every night it is initialed. The handwriting is still mine, but neater than I have ever managed. Yesterday I noticed my supervisor reviewing my checklists in her office. She was comparing them, stacking them in chronological order. I saw her pause at Item 1, now always initialed, always complete. She nodded with approval. I do not go to room 4F anymore. I do not need to. Whatever is completing Item 1 does not require my presence, but the checklist still appears on the clipboard each night, and my initials still appear in that first box each morning. Documenting work I know I did not do. Some tasks complete themselves long after you stop trying to understand why they were assigned in the first place. Story 2. The waste porter assigned to a sealed chute. I transported medical waste for 7 years before I was assigned to chute 9. The job required punctuality, attention to routing protocols, and the ability to ignore what you were hauling. Most porters lasted 3 years before transferring to food services or linen distribution. I stayed because the work was predictable and the night differential paid enough to matter. Medical waste followed a strict chain of custody. Each bag was tagged at the point of generation with a department code, a weight measurement, and a disposal classification. Red bags for infectious materials, yellow bags for chemical waste, black bags for pharmaceutical remnants. My route covered 4 floors, collecting from 23 designated chutes. I logged every pickup in a digital manifest that synced with the hospital's waste management database. Chute 9 was added to my route on a Tuesday. My supervisor, a man named Peter Hollis who had worked waste management for 16 years, handed me an updated routing sheet during my pre-shift briefing. The new stop was listed between chute 8 on the 4th floor and chute 10 in the basement surgical wing. "Chute 9's back online," Hollis said, not looking up from his computer. "Same protocol as the others. Log the weight, scan the tags, transport to the incinerator dock." I asked where chute 9 was located. He checked his screen. "Sub-level 2, west corridor across from the old dialysis prep room." Sub-level 2 was rarely used. Most of the rooms down there had been converted to storage or sealed off entirely during a renovation 8 years prior. I took the routing sheet and added chute 9 to my mental map. My shift began at 10 p.m. I completed my first 8 pickups without incident, collected 93 bags totaling 461 pounds. The waste composition matched expected distributions: 72% infectious, 19% chemical, 9% pharmaceutical. Standard Tuesday volume. I descended to sub-level 2 at 12:34 a.m. The west corridor was dimly lit, illuminated by every third ceiling panel. The old dialysis prep room was marked with faded signage. Across from it I found chute 9. The chute door was welded shut. I examined the seams. The welding was industrial grade, continuous beads running along all 4 edges of the access door. No gaps, no hinges, no way to open it. I checked my routing sheet again. Chute 9, sub-level 2, west corridor. The location was correct. I radioed Hollis. He answered on the second call. I explained the situation. He asked me to wait, then came back on the radio 3 minutes later. "System shows chute 9 received a deposit at 11:52 p.m. tonight," he said. 18 pounds, red bag classification, tagged from 4th floor orthopedics. I told him the chute was welded shut. He told me to check the weight sensor anyway. The sensor panel was mounted beside the sealed door. I accessed the diagnostic screen using my Porter ID badge. The sensor was active and calibrated. It registered a current load of 18 pounds deposited at 11:52 p.m. The tag ID matched orthopedics department coding. I explained this to Hollis. He instructed me to log the pickup as complete and continue my route. I asked how I was supposed to retrieve waste from a welded chute. He repeated his instruction and ended the radio call. I logged chute 9 as collected, weight 18 pounds, and continued to chute 10. The next night, chute 9 appeared on my route again. I arrived at sub-level 2 at 12:41 a.m. The chute door was still welded shut. The sensor panel showed a new deposit, 22 pounds, red bag classification, tagged from 3rd floor surgical recovery. Deposit timestamp, 11:37 p.m. I did not radio Hollis. I logged the pickup and moved on. Chute 9 appeared on my route every night. The sensor always registered a deposit. The weight varied between 14 and 31 pounds. The tags showed different originating departments: cardiology, neurology, pediatrics, intensive care. The timestamps were always between 11 p.m. and midnight. The chute door remained sealed. After 2 weeks, I reviewed the waste manifest during my break. I traced every tag ID logged from chute 9. None of the originating departments showed corresponding waste generation records. The bags logged at chute 9 existed only in the chute 9 sensor data. No upstream documentation confirmed their creation. I cross-referenced the tag IDs with hospital-wide waste generation. Every tag ID from chute 9 was unique, following proper formatting, but none appeared in any department's disposal logs. The waste was being recorded as collected from chute 9, but it had never been recorded as generated anywhere else. I brought this to Hollis during a shift briefing. He reviewed my printouts, then checked his computer. He nodded slowly. "System's clean on my end," he said. "Chute 9's integrated properly. Tags are valid. Weights are within normal parameters." I asked where the waste was coming from if no department was generating it. He closed my printouts and handed them back. "Your job is transport and logging, not auditing," he said. "Chute 9's on your route. You log it. That's the job." I continued logging chute 9. The deposits never stopped. Every night between 11 p.m. and midnight, the sensor registered a new load. I began photographing the sealed chute door with my phone, documenting the unbroken welds. The photos accumulated in a folder I labeled Chute 9 Evidence. 1 month into the assignment, I noticed a pattern in the tag IDs. Every tag from chute 9 included my employee number in the metadata field reserved for porter identification. This field was supposed to remain blank until I scanned the tag during pickup, but the chute 9 tags were pre-populated with my employee number before I ever logged them. I checked older manifests. Every chute 9 tag since my assignment included my employee number. The tags were generated with my identification already embedded. I showed this to Hollis. He examined the data, then looked at me with an expression I could not interpret. "You're the assigned porter for chute 9, he said. "Your number's supposed to be in the system." I explained that the number was appearing before I scanned the tags, before I even arrived at the chute. He refreshed his computer screen. "System shows you scanning the tags at the appropriate times," he said. "Logs are clean. No anomalies." I asked to see the scan timestamps. He turned his monitor toward me. Every chute 9 tag showed a scan timestamp matching my actual arrival time at sub-level 2. But I had never scanned any tags. The chute was sealed. There were no physical bags to scan. "You're doing fine work," Hollis said. "Chute 9's running smoothly because of you." I stopped asking questions. I logged Chute 9 every night, watched the weight numbers change on the sensor panel, and documented the sealed door with my phone. The metadata field always showed my employee number. The timestamps always matched my movements. 3 months into the assignment, the waste composition from Chute 9 began to deviate. The sensor still registered weights and classifications, but the proportions no longer matched standard distributions. One night, Chute 9 logged 41 pounds of yellow bag chemical waste from a department that had not used chemical agents in 5 years. Another night, it logged 9 pounds of black bag pharmaceutical waste tagged from the cafeteria. I reviewed 6 weeks of Chute 9 data. The waste classifications were becoming increasingly inconsistent with the tagged originating departments. Pediatrics was generating chemical waste. Cardiology was disposing of pharmaceuticals. The cafeteria was producing infectious materials. I printed the analysis and left it on Hollis's desk with a note requesting a meeting. He called me into his office the next night before my shift. "I reviewed your report," he said. "Chute 9's waste composition is within acceptable variance." I explained that the departments were generating waste types they did not use. He pulled up a database screen. "Hospital operations change," he said. "Departments expand services. New medications get introduced. Waste streams adjust accordingly." I asked if he had confirmed these operational changes with the departments. He closed the database. "That's not waste management's responsibility," he said. "We transport and log. The departments manage their own generation protocols." I asked why Chute 9 was the only source of inconsistent waste. He stood up, indicating the meeting was over. "Chute 9's part of your route," he said. "Log it accurately, that's all I need from you." I returned to my route. I logged Chute 9 every night. The inconsistencies increased. Tags appeared from departments that had been closed for years. Weights exceeded the physical capacity of standard waste bags. One night, the sensor registered -4 pounds. I logged it as instructed. Last week, I accessed the hospital's architectural records during my lunch break. I searched for construction documents related to Sublevel 2. I found the renovation plans from 8 years ago. Chute 9 was listed in the demolition schedule. It had been sealed and decommissioned permanently. The waste routing system had been updated to remove it from active service. I checked the digital waste management database. Chute 9 was listed as active. Its activation date was 7 years ago, 1 year before it was demolished. I printed the architectural plans and the database records. I placed them side by side on Hollis's desk with a note. Chute 9 was demolished before it was activated. Hollis called me into his office an hour later. The documents were in a folder on his desk. "I see you've been researching," he said. I asked how a demolished chute could log waste. He opened the folder, glanced at the papers, then closed it again. "The system shows Chute 9 is operational," he said. "You've been logging pickups for months. The data is consistent. That's all that matters." I asked if he understood what I was showing him. He leaned back in his chair. "I understand you're a good porter," he said. "You show up on time. You follow protocols. You log your route accurately. Chute 9's on your route and you've handled it professionally." I asked what I was actually logging if the chute did not exist. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "You're logging Chute 9, he said. "Same as you log chutes 1 through 8 and 10 through 23. It's all data entry. Where the data comes from isn't your concern." I left his office. I completed my route that night. When I reached Sublevel 2, I stood in front of the sealed chute for 11 minutes. The sensor panel showed a deposit. 26 pounds red bag classification tagged from a department that was demolished 9 years ago. The tag metadata included my employee number and a scan timestamp that had not occurred yet. I logged the pickup at 12:53 a.m. The timestamp updated to match. I still log shoot 9 every night. The sensor still registers deposits that cannot exist. My employee number still appears in tags I never scan. And somewhere in the hospital's database, records show I am efficiently transporting waste from a chute that was welded shut before I ever worked here. Some routes expand to include stops that were closed long before you started, and the only proof you need is a number that says you were always meant to be there. Story 3. The linen room attendant and the return sheets. I managed linen inventory for 13 years without incident. The work was systematic. Soiled linens arrived in coated mesh bags, were cataloged by weight and contamination level, sent to the laundry contractor, and returned sanitized within 48 hours. Each bundle was tagged with a batch number, processed according to health code specifications, and redistributed to supply closets throughout the hospital. The system functioned because every step was documented. My shift began at 6 a.m. in the linen room on the ground floor. The space was divided into 3 sections: receiving for soiled linens, storage for clean inventory, and distribution for outgoing supplies. I worked alone most days except during the twice-weekly deliveries when a laundry contractor's driver helped unload the industrial washer's output. The first anomaly occurred on a Thursday morning in September. I was processing returned linens from Wednesday's pickup. Each bundle arrived wrapped in biodegradable plastic with a manifest slip listing the batch number, item count, and processing timestamp. I scanned the barcodes into our inventory system and moved the bundles to designated shelves. Bundle 379 was tagged for Ward C, rooms 301 through 312. I scanned it at 7:41 a.m. The system rejected the barcode. I rescanned it. The screen displayed an error message. Destination ward inactive. I checked the manifest slip. Ward C, rooms 301 through 312. I accessed the hospital's room directory on my desktop terminal. Ward C had been decommissioned 6 years ago during a facility reorganization. The rooms had been converted to administrative offices and storage. I assumed the laundry contractor had used an outdated routing template. I set bundle 379 aside and made a note to contact them during my afternoon break. I continued processing the remaining bundles without further issues. The following Thursday, bundle 379 appeared again in the delivery. Same batch number, same manifest slip, same destination tag. I had not sent it out the previous week. I had set it aside in the receiving section, intending to resolve the routing error. I walked to the spot where I had left it. The shelf was empty. I checked the inventory logs. No record existed of bundle 379 leaving the linen room, but here it was, returned with the weekly delivery, freshly processed and wrapped. I opened the bundle to inspect the contents: 12 fitted sheets, 12 flat sheets, 18 pillowcases, all standard hospital linen, white, heavy-duty cotton blend. I examined each piece for identifying marks. No damage, no unusual wear, no stains. I checked the stains. 3 of the fitted sheets had brownish discoloration along the center seam. The marks were faint but extensive, covering an area roughly the size of a human torso. I documented the stains with photographs and submitted a quality complaint to the laundry contractor. Then I repackaged bundle 379 and placed it in the outgoing contaminated section to be cleaned again. The contractor called me 2 days later. A woman named Alice Brennan, the facility manager, said she had reviewed my complaint. She asked me to describe the stains. I explained they were brownish, faint, and located on 3 fitted sheets from batch 379. Batch 379 was processed on September 19th, she said. All items passed quality inspection. No residual staining was detected. I told her I had photographs. She asked me to email them. I sent the photos while she waited on the line. I heard her keyboard clicking. "I see the images," she said. "Those stains are not present on our post-processing scans." I asked what she meant. She explained that every linen batch was photographed after cleaning as part of their quality assurance protocol. The scans were archived for 6 months. She sent me the post-processing scans for bundle 379. The photographs showed the same sheets I had documented, but in the contractor's images, the sheets were pristine. No brownish marks, no discoloration. I compared the 2 sets of photographs side by side on my computer. Same sheets, same batch number, different conditions. "Perhaps the stains developed during transport," Alice suggested. "Sometimes residual moisture reacts with packaging materials." I told her the sheets were dry when I opened the bundle. She said she would flag batch 379 for additional inspection on the next cycle. I thanked her and ended the call. Bundle 379 did not appear in the next delivery. I checked the outgoing contaminated log. I had sent it out for reprocessing, but the contractor's manifest showed no record of receiving it. I searched the linen room. Bundle 379 was not in receiving, storage, or distribution. 2 weeks later, it appeared again in a Thursday delivery. Same batch number, same destination tag. Ward C, rooms 301 through 312. I opened the bundle immediately. The 3 fitted sheets with brownish stains were inside, discoloration darker than before. I did not call the contractor. I repackaged the bundle and locked it in a storage cabinet I used for damaged linens awaiting disposal. I labeled the cabinet with a note, "Do not process." The following Thursday, bundle 379 was in the delivery. I checked the locked cabinet. The bundle was still inside, undisturbed. But another copy of bundle 379 had arrived with the weekly shipment. I opened both bundles. The contents were identical, including the 3 stained fitted sheets. I compared the stains. They matched in size, shape, and color intensity. I labeled one bundle original and the other duplicate and stored them separately. The next week, a 3rd copy of bundle 379 arrived, then a 4th. By mid-November, I had 9 copies of bundle 379 locked in the damaged linen cabinet. Each bundle contained identical stains on identical sheets. I stopped opening them. I simply locked each new arrival in the cabinet and continued my work. The cabinet filled quickly. I requisitioned a 2nd cabinet and continued storing the bundles. In early December, I noticed the stains were changing. I opened the most recent bundle and found the brownish discoloration had spread. It now covered the entire center section of each fitted sheet. The color had darkened to a deep rust tone. The fabric felt stiff in those areas as though the fibers had calcified. I compared it to the earliest bundle I had stored. The stains on that one were still faint and limited to the torso-sized area. The progression was undeniable. Each successive bundle showed more extensive and darker staining, despite all of them arriving freshly processed from the laundry contractor. I photographed the progression and compiled a report. I included the original quality complaint, the contractor's response, the inventory discrepancies, and the documentation of 9 identical bundles appearing over 8 weeks. I submitted the report to my supervisor, a woman named Denise Kowalski, who managed hospital facilities operations. Denise reviewed the report in my presence. She examined the photographs, read the contractor's statements, and checked the inventory logs on her computer. "This is thorough documentation," she said. "But I'm confused about one detail. These bundles are tagged for Ward C, which closed 6 years ago. Why are we still receiving linens for those rooms?" I explained that I did not know. The bundles arrived with each delivery, properly processed and wrapped, tagged for a ward that no longer existed. Denise made a phone call to the laundry contractor. I listened as she described the situation. Alice Brennan confirmed that batch 379 was not in their active rotation and had not been for several years. The batch number corresponded to a discontinued ward. No linens matching that tag should be in circulation. Denise thanked her and ended the call. She looked at me. "The contractor says these bundles aren't coming from them," she said. I told her I watched the delivery driver unload them every Thursday. Denise picked up my report again. "I'm going to review this with the compliance office," she said. "In the meantime, stop accepting bundles tagged for inactive wards. If they arrive, refuse the delivery." The following Thursday, I inspected the delivery before signing the manifest. Bundle 379 was included. I pointed it out to the driver, a man named Marcus Delgado, who had been delivering linens for 4 years. "This bundle is tagged for a closed ward," I said. "I can't accept it." Marcus checked his loading manifest. "It's listed on my sheet. Batch 379, Ward C, standard delivery." I explained that Ward C had been closed for 6 years. He shrugged. "I load what the facility packs. If it's on the truck, it's supposed to be delivered." I asked him to take it back. He refused, citing company policy that once a bundle was loaded for delivery, it had to be delivered. I could refuse to sign for it, but he would leave it in the receiving area regardless. I did not sign for bundle 379. Marcus left it on the receiving dock and departed. I locked it in the damaged linen cabinet with the others. The cabinet now held 14 copies of bundle 379. I stopped counting after that. They arrived every Thursday, whether I signed for them or not. I locked them away and continued my work. Last month, I unlocked the cabinet to store another bundle. The earliest bundles had deteriorated. The plastic wrapping had split and the sheets inside were no longer white. The stains had spread across every piece of fabric, now a uniform dark brown that looked almost black in dim light. The material was brittle, crumbling at the edges. I touched one of the sheets. It felt like paper, thin and fragile. When I lifted it, pieces flaked off and drifted to the cabinet floor. The smell was faint but distinct, like old metal and something organic I could not identify. I closed the cabinet and locked it. Yesterday, Denise called me into her office. She had received a report from the compliance office regarding bundle 379. She handed me a printed summary. According to hospital records, the linens from Ward C were incinerated during the decommissioning process 6 years ago, she said. There should be no remaining inventory from that ward. I told her about the 14 bundles locked in my cabinet. She asked to see them. We walked to the linen room together. I unlocked the cabinet. The bundles were arranged chronologically, the oldest ones at the back, the newest in front. Denise examined the most recent bundle, clean, white, freshly wrapped. Then she looked at the oldest bundle in the back. The plastic was split, the contents dark and crumbling. "How long has this been accumulating?" she asked. I told her since September. She was silent for a long moment. "The compliance office recommends we dispose of these immediately," she said. "They're not in our active inventory. They're not coming from the contractor. We have no record of them existing. They need to be removed." I asked where they were coming from, if not the contractor. She shook her head. "That's not your concern. Arrange for disposal. I'll have maintenance pick them up tomorrow." I spent the afternoon cataloging the bundles for disposal. I counted 23 copies of bundle 379 in total. The inventory system still showed no record of any of them. This morning, maintenance arrived to collect the bundles. I unlocked the cabinet and stepped back. The maintenance worker, a man I did not recognize, loaded the bundles onto a cart. He paused when he reached the oldest ones. "These are pretty far gone," he said. "What happened to them?" I told him I did not know. He nodded and continued loading. After he left, I checked the Thursday delivery. Bundle 379 was waiting in the receiving area, freshly wrapped and tagged for Ward C. I locked it in the now empty cabinet and returned to my desk. Some inventory never stops circulating, even after every record confirms it was destroyed, and the only evidence you need is a tag that says it was always meant to come back. Story 4. The Environmental Services Supervisor's Floor Plan. I coordinated cleaning schedules for the hospital's Environmental Services Department for 9 years. The position required familiarity with architectural layouts, staffing allocation, and time management. My office was on the second floor, adjacent to the supply depot and within sight of the main custodial break room. I managed 17 staff members across 3 shifts, assigning them to zones based on square footage, traffic volume, and contamination risk. The hospital's floor plan was updated quarterly to reflect renovations, room repurposing, and structural changes. I received the updated blueprints as digital files from the facilities management office. Each file included room dimensions, access points, and designated use classifications. I used these plans to create cleaning rotations, ensuring every area received appropriate attention based on its function and usage patterns. The autumn update arrived in my email inbox on October 4th at 9:17 a.m. I opened the attachment and compared it to the previous quarter's blueprints. Most changes were minor. A storage closet on the 3rd floor had been converted to a medication dispensary, and 2 patient rooms in the east wing had been merged into a single isolation suite. I noted these adjustments and began recalculating staff assignments. One addition stood out. A corridor labeled West Annex Service Hall had been added to the 2nd floor schematic. The corridor was marked as 73 feet long and 9 feet wide, totaling 657 square feet. It connected the main 2nd floor hallway to the northwest stairwell. I had never noticed this corridor before. I cross-referenced the new plan with the previous quarter's blueprints. The West Annex Service Hall had not existed in the earlier version. I assumed it had been constructed during the summer renovation period. I added it to my cleaning rotation and assigned it to the evening shift. That evening, I reviewed the completed work logs. The evening supervisor, a woman named Patricia Grant who had worked environmental services for 11 years, noted that the West Annex Service Hall had been cleaned in 42 minutes. I checked the assignment sheet. Patricia had allocated one custodian, a man named Thomas Archer, to handle the corridor along with his other 2nd floor responsibilities. 42 minutes seemed excessive for 657 square feet. Standard cleaning protocols average 2 minutes per 100 square feet for low-traffic service corridors. The West Annex Service Hall should have taken approximately 13 minutes. I made a note to ask Patricia about the discrepancy during our next shift overlap. The following morning, I reviewed Thomas's time card. He had clocked out at his usual time, 10:31 p.m., indicating he had completed his shift without overtime. If the West Annex Service Hall had taken 42 minutes, he would have needed to reduce time spent on other areas. I checked his other assigned zones. All were logged as complete within expected time frames. I pulled up the 2nd floor blueprints on my computer and examined the West Annex Service Hall. The corridor was a straight line, no branches or alcoves, with standard flooring and wall finishes. Nothing in the layout suggested why it would require 42 minutes to clean. I decided to inspect the corridor myself. I left my office at 10:53 a.m. and walked to the 2nd floor. I located the main hallway where the West Annex Service Hall was supposed to connect. I walked the entire length of the hallway twice. I found no entrance to a service corridor. The northwest stairwell was accessible through a clearly marked door, but no additional passage led to it from the main hall. I returned to my office and compared the blueprints to my memory of the second floor. The plans clearly showed the West Annex service hall connecting the main hallway to the stairwell. But no such corridor existed in the physical space. I emailed the facilities management office, attaching the blueprints and requesting clarification. I explained that the West Annex service hall appeared on the updated plan but was not physically present. A man named Brian Teller, the facilities manager, responded within an hour. West Annex service hall is part of the Q3 update package. It was included in the second floor renovation completed in August. Please adjust cleaning schedules accordingly. I replied, explaining that I had inspected the second floor and found no such corridor. Brian responded 20 minutes later. Blueprints reflect current architectural configuration. If you are unable to locate a designated area, please contact me directly and I will arrange a walkthrough. I called Brian's office. His assistant said he was in a meeting and would return my call before the end of the day. He did not call back. That evening, I attended the shift change briefing with Patricia. I asked her about the West Annex service hall. She checked her notes. Thomas cleaned it yesterday evening, she said. Took him 42 minutes. He logged it as complete. I asked her if she had inspected the corridor. She shook her head. Thomas is reliable. If he logged it as complete, it's complete. I asked her to show me where the corridor was located. We walked to the second floor together. Patricia led me to the main hallway and stopped near the northwest stairwell access. It should be right here, she said, gesturing to a blank wall between two patient room doors. There was no corridor. Patricia frowned and pulled out her copy of the floor plan. She compared it to the wall in front of us. This doesn't match, she said. The plan shows a corridor entrance here. I asked if Thomas had mentioned any difficulty locating the corridor. Patricia shook her head. He didn't report any issues. He logged it as cleaned, standard protocol. I suggested we ask Thomas directly. Patricia radioed him. He responded within seconds. Patricia explained the situation and asked Thomas to meet us at the second floor main hallway. Thomas arrived 4 minutes later. He was 29 years old, had worked custodial services for 3 years and had a reputation for thoroughness. Patricia asked him about the West Annex service hall. I cleaned it last night, Thomas said. Took about 42 minutes. I asked him to show us where the corridor was located. He walked to the same blank wall where Patricia and I had been standing. Right here, he said, pointing at the wall. I told him there was no corridor. Thomas looked at me, then at the wall, then back at me. I cleaned it last night, he repeated. It's a service corridor about 70 feet long. Standard tile floor, painted walls, 2 overhead lights. Took me 42 minutes. I asked him how he accessed the corridor if there was no entrance. Thomas paused. I used the door, he said, gesturing to the blank wall. Patricia asked him what door. Thomas pointed again at the wall. The door right here. Patricia and I exchanged a glance. I asked Thomas if he felt all right. He nodded. I'm fine. I cleaned the West Annex service hall last night. It's on my assignment sheet. I showed him the blueprints on my tablet. He examined the schematic and nodded. That's the corridor I cleaned. I pointed at the wall. This is where the corridor is supposed to be. There is no door here. Thomas looked at the wall for a long moment. His expression remained neutral. I cleaned it, he said. It took 42 minutes. Patricia excused Thomas and told him to continue his shift. After he left, she turned to me. I'll reassign the West Annex service hall to someone else, she said. Maybe Thomas is overtired. I agreed and returned to my office. I updated the cleaning rotation, removing the West Annex service hall from Thomas's assignments and adding it to another custodian's workload. The next evening, I reviewed the work logs. The West Annex service hall had been cleaned by a woman named Laura Keller. Time logged, 39 minutes. I checked Laura's other assigned areas. All were completed within standard time frames. I called Patricia. She confirmed Laura had logged the West Annex service hall as complete without reporting any issues. I asked Patricia to meet me on the second floor immediately. We found Laura restocking a supply cart near the east wing. Patricia asked her about the West Annex service hall. Laura nodded. I cleaned it tonight. Took about 39 minutes. I asked her to show us the corridor. She led us to the same blank wall where Thomas had pointed the previous night. "It's right here," Laura said. I told her there was no corridor. Laura frowned. "I just cleaned it. It's a service hall, connects the main hallway to the northwest stairwell. Standard cleaning protocol." Patricia asked Laura how she accessed the corridor. Laura pointed at the blank wall. "Through the door." I asked her to describe the door. Laura thought for a moment. "Standard hospital door, gray frame, metal handle, automatic closer, no signage." I asked her to open the door. Laura reached toward the wall and mimed turning a handle. Her hand moved through empty air. "It's locked now," she said. "I don't have the key." Patricia told Laura to continue her shift. After Laura left, Patricia turned to me. "Two custodians, same response. Both insist they cleaned a corridor that doesn't exist." I suggested we remove the West Annex service hall from the cleaning rotation entirely. Patricia agreed. I updated the schedule that night, deleting all references to the corridor. The following morning, I received an automated email from the hospital's facilities management system. The subject line read, "Square footage adjustment notification." The email explained that the total cleanable square footage assigned to my department had been reduced by 657 square feet, effective immediately. The reduction corresponded to the West Annex service hall. I checked my cleaning rotation. The West Annex service hall was no longer listed, but my total assigned square footage was now 657 square feet smaller than the previous quarter. The missing area had been deducted from my departmental responsibility. I called Brian Teller. His assistant said he was unavailable but would call back. He did not call back. I reviewed the updated blueprints again. The West Annex service hall was still marked on the second floor plan, but it was now shaded in gray, indicating it was outside my department's cleaning jurisdiction. I checked the legend at the bottom of the blueprint. Gray shaded areas were classified as externally maintained. I had never seen this classification before. I emailed Brian asking who was responsible for cleaning externally maintained areas. He responded the next day. Externally maintained areas are serviced independently and do not require environmental services scheduling. I asked who serviced them. Brian did not respond. Over the following weeks, I noticed other gray shaded areas appearing on the blueprints: a storage room on the 4th floor, a corridor in the basement, a utility closet on the 3rd floor. Each area was marked as externally maintained. Each area was deducted from my department's total square footage. I inspected several of these locations. None of them existed in the physical hospital, but custodians continued to log them as cleaned, describing detailed layouts and reporting completion times. Last month, the total gray shaded area on the blueprints exceeded 4,000 square feet. My department's assigned workload had decreased proportionally. Staffing requirements were recalculated based on the reduced square footage. I was instructed to cut 2 custodial positions. I submitted a report to administration, explaining that the square footage reductions corresponded to non-existent areas. The response came from Brian Teller. Blueprint updates reflect current facility configuration. Adjustments to departmental allocations are calculated automatically based on approved architectural plans. I asked for a meeting. Brian's assistant said he was unavailable indefinitely. This morning I received the latest quarterly blueprint update. The second floor now includes 6 gray-shaded corridors, none of which physically exist. My department's assigned square footage has been reduced by 9,200 feet. Thomas approached me during the afternoon shift change. He asked why the West Annex Service Hall was no longer on his assignment sheet. I told him the corridor had been reclassified. He nodded slowly. "I still see it when I walk past," he said. "The door's usually closed, but sometimes I hear something on the other side." I asked him what he heard. He thought for a moment. "Footsteps," he said, "like someone's cleaning in there." Some floor plans expand to include spaces that were never built, and the only proof you need is a cleaning log that says someone finished work in a room no one else can find. Story 5. The biohazard cleaner who logged a negative spill. I specialized in biohazard remediation for 6 years before I encountered the incident that required me to log a negative quantity. The work was governed by strict containment protocols, documentation requirements, and personal protective equipment standards. Every spill received a unique incident number, a classification code, and a detailed report describing the substance, volume, exposure risk, and remediation method. I responded to an average of 4 spills per week, ranging from minor blood splashes to significant contaminations requiring room decommissioning. The call came through my radio at 2:37 a.m. on a Wednesday in late November. A spill had been reported in the third-floor radiology suite. The automated dispatch system provided limited details. Incident number 6492, classification pending, location confirmed. I gathered my equipment cart and proceeded to the third floor. The radiology suite was accessible through a controlled entrance that required badge authentication. I scanned my ID and entered the outer corridor. The suite consisted of 4 imaging rooms, a control station, a small waiting area, and a staff preparation alcove. The lights were dimmed for overnight operation. I checked the digital floor plan mounted near the entrance. No active spill markers were displayed. I radioed dispatch and confirmed the location. The operator, a woman named Monica Reyes, who had worked overnight communications for 8 years, verified the incident number and location. Third floor radiology suite, incident 6492, she confirmed. Spill reported at 2:31 a.m. I asked who had reported the spill. Monica checked her log. Automated sensor alert, she said. No personnel report filed. I acknowledged the information and began my inspection. The radiology suite used environmental sensors to detect airborne contaminants, liquid spills, and temperature anomalies. If a sensor detected an irregularity, it automatically generated an incident report and dispatched remediation staff. The system had been implemented 3 years earlier to reduce response times. I examined each imaging room systematically. Room 1 showed no signs of spills, contamination, or sensor activation. Room 2 was similarly clear. I checked the control station and waiting area. All surfaces were clean, dry, and undisturbed. In room 3, I found the activated sensor. A yellow indicator light pulsed on the unit mounted near the floor drain. I accessed the sensor's diagnostic panel using my remediation badge. The display showed a spill detection event logged at 2:31 a.m. Substance classification, biological fluid, estimated volume 3.2 liters, location floor surface, northwest quadrant. I inspected the northwest quadrant of room 3. The floor was dry, clean, and showed no visible contamination. I used a UV inspection lamp to check for residual organic material. No fluorescence appeared. I swabbed the floor and tested the sample with a field contamination kit. The results showed no biological markers. I returned to the sensor panel and ran a calibration diagnostic. The sensor passed all calibration checks. I reviewed the detection log. The sensor had registered a 3.2-liter spill of biological fluid at 2:31 a.m. in the exact location where I now stood. But no physical evidence supported this detection. I radioed Monica and explained the situation. She instructed me to document the incident as a false positive sensor alert and return to standby. I began preparing the standard false alarm report. The sensor's estimated volume field caught my attention. 3.2 liters was a significant quantity, equivalent to roughly half a standard mop bucket. A spill of that size would leave visible residue, even after partial evaporation or cleaning. I examined the floor again, checking for drainage paths, absorbent materials, or any indication that a large volume of fluid had been present. Nothing. The floor was pristine. I accessed the sensor's historical log, reviewing detection events from the previous 6 months. Room 3's sensor had activated 7 times, all during overnight hours, all logging biological fluid spills ranging from 2.8 to 4.1 liters. Each incident had been assigned a unique number, dispatched to remediation staff, and documented as resolved. I searched the remediation database for the previous incidents. 6 of the 7 were logged as false positives. The 7th, incident number 5983 from October, was logged as remediated by a technician named Harold Voss. I knew Harold. He had worked biohazard response for 9 years and was meticulous in his documentation. I called Harold's personal extension. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice rough with sleep. "This is Harold." I identified myself and asked about incident 5983. Harold was silent for a moment, then I heard him moving, possibly checking notes. "October 19th, he said. 3rd floor radiology, room 3, sensor alert for biological fluid spill." I asked if he had found a spill. Harold paused again. "No visible spill. Floor was clean, but the sensor was insistent." I asked what he meant by insistent. Harold's voice lowered. The sensor kept reactivating while I was in the room. I would clear the alert, and it would trigger again within minutes. I ran 4 separate calibration checks. The sensor was functioning correctly. I asked how he resolved the incident. Harold exhaled slowly. "I logged it as remediated. I followed containment protocols, treated the indicated area with disinfectant, and cleared the scene. The sensor stopped alerting after I documented the cleanup." I thanked Harold and ended the call. I returned to the sensor panel in room 3 and reviewed the current incident details. The estimated volume field now showed a different number, negative 0.6 liters. I stared at the display. Negative quantities were not possible in spill remediation. Volume measurements represented physical substance. You could not remove a negative amount of material. The reading made no sense. I radioed Monica and reported the discrepancy. She accessed the incident database remotely. "Incident 6492 shows an estimated volume of negative 0.6 liters, she confirmed. "That's not a valid entry." I asked if she could correct the database entry. Monica tried several times, then reported that the system would not accept manual overrides for sensor-generated data. "The sensor is reporting negative 0.6 liters, she said. "The database is recording it accurately. I can't change what the sensor is transmitting." I examined the sensor unit itself. The device was a sealed environmental monitor installed during construction and calibrated monthly by specialized technicians. I had no authority to open it or modify its programming. I could only read its output and respond accordingly. The estimated volume field changed again while I watched. negative 1.3 liters. I documented the reading with a photograph. I radioed Monica and reported the change. She confirmed the database now showed negative 1.3 liters. The quantity is decreasing, she said. That shouldn't be possible. I asked what protocol applied to negative volume incidents. Monica was silent for several seconds. There is no protocol for negative volumes, she said finally. I'll need to escalate this to the shift supervisor. I waited in room 3 while Monica contacted her supervisor. The sensor display continued updating. Negative 2.1 liters, negative 2.9 liters, negative 3.7 liters. The numbers decreased in irregular intervals, sometimes changing every few minutes, sometimes remaining stable for 10 or 15 minutes. I photographed each update and logged the timestamps. Monica returned to the radio at 3:28 a.m. Shift supervisor instructs you to treat the incident as a standard remediation, follow containment protocols, and document the cleanup. I asked how I should remediate a negative volume spill. Monica hesitated. Follow standard procedures. The system requires a remediation report to close the incident. I unpacked my equipment. Standard containment protocol required isolating the affected area, applying appropriate disinfectant, collecting contaminated materials in biohazard bags, and decontaminating all equipment before leaving the scene. I had performed this procedure hundreds of times. I cordoned off the northwest quadrant of room 3 using barrier tape. I prepared a disinfectant solution according to biological contamination specifications. I applied the solution to the floor, waited the required contact time, and wiped the area with absorbent pads. The pads remained clean. No discoloration, no residue, no indication of contamination. I sealed the pads in a biohazard bag, decontaminated my equipment, and removed the barrier tape. The sensor display showed negative 5.2 liters. I completed the remediation report in the database. Substance type, biological fluid, volume removed. I left this field blank. Containment method, standard disinfection protocol, disposal method, biohazard incineration. Scene status, cleared. The database would not accept the report without a volume entry. I tried entering 0. The system rejected it, stating the volume must match the sensor reading. I tried entering 5.2 liters. The system rejected it, stating the volume did not match the sensor reading. I entered negative 5.2 liters. The system accepted the entry. I submitted the report and cleared the scene at 4:06 a.m. As I left room 3, I glanced at the sensor panel. The estimated volume now showed negative 6.8 liters. The yellow indicator light pulsed steadily. I returned to standby and waited for my next call. None came. At the end of my shift, I reviewed the incident database. Incident 6492 was listed as closed. Remediation completed by me at 4:06 a.m. Volume removed, negative 5.2 liters. Over the following weeks, I responded to 3 more sensor alerts in 3rd floor radiology room 3. Each incident logged a negative volume, negative 4.1 liters, negative 7.6 liters, negative 9.3 liters. Each time, I followed standard containment protocols, found no physical contamination, and logged a negative volume in the remediation report. Harold called me one evening before my shift. He asked if I had experienced any unusual incidents in radiology room 3. I described the negative volume readings. Harold was quiet for a long time. I had one of those, he said, last month. I logged it as a sensor malfunction. I asked if the database had accepted his report. Harold confirmed it had. But the sensor kept activating, he said. Every few nights, another negative volume. Eventually, I stopped responding. I let other technicians handle it. I asked why. Harold's voice was careful, measured. "The sensor isn't malfunctioning," he said. "It's recording something, I don't know what. But when I'm in that room, I feel like I'm cleaning up something that's already been cleaned, like I'm working in reverse." Last week, I received a call for Incident 7215, third floor radiology, room 3. I arrived at 2:49 a.m. The sensor showed negative 14.7 liters. I entered the northwest quadrant. The floor was clean. I followed containment protocols, applied disinfectant, collected absorbent pads, and logged the remediation. As I prepared to leave, I checked the sensor panel one final time. The display had changed. It now showed a single line of text. "Containment achieved prior to arrival." I photographed the display and submitted my report. Volume removed. Negative 14.7 liters. Scene status: cleared. The database accepted the report without error. This morning I reviewed my remediation history. Incident 6492 and all subsequent radiology room 3 incidents are listed in my completed work log. The reports state I removed a total of negative 43.1 liters of biological fluid from a location that showed no signs of contamination. Monica called me during my afternoon break. She said the environmental sensors in radiology room 3 were scheduled for replacement next month. The new sensors will not have the capability to record negative volumes. I asked what would happen to the existing incident reports. Monica said they would remain archived as historical data. "The system will show you remediated negative volumes," she said. "But future incidents will follow standard positive value ranges." I thanked her and ended the call. Some contaminations are measured by what was never there. And the only proof you need is a report that says you successfully removed something before it ever spilled. Story 6. The Floor Maintenance Technician and the Polished Reflection. I operated industrial floor polishing equipment for the hospital's Environmental Services Department for 8 years. The work occurred exclusively after visiting hours, when corridors were cleared of foot traffic and patient transport activity had ceased for the night. My shift began at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. I was responsible for maintaining the tile and vinyl composite flooring on the second and third floors, using a ride-on burnisher that achieved a mirror-quality finish required by hospital aesthetic standards. The equipment was a heavy commercial buffer, model LX700, manufactured by a company that specialized in healthcare facility maintenance. The machine weighed 412 pounds, operated on a rechargeable battery system, and used diamond-impregnated polishing pads that rotated at 3,000 revolutions per minute. The result was a high-gloss surface that reflected overhead lighting and surrounding walls with remarkable clarity. I followed a fixed route each night, beginning on the third floor and working systematically through each corridor before descending to the second floor. The route was designed to maximize efficiency and minimize disruption to hospital operations. I worked alone, communicating with the overnight facility's supervisor through a two-way radio carried on my equipment belt. The third floor east corridor was one of the longer stretches on my route, measuring 147 feet from the elevator bank to the emergency stairwell. The corridor was illuminated by recessed LED panels spaced every 12 feet, providing consistent, shadow-free lighting ideal for achieving uniform floor polish. Patient rooms lined both sides of the corridor, their doors closed during overnight hours. I began polishing the east corridor at 11:32 p.m. on a Tuesday in early December. The process was methodical. I advanced the burnisher at a walking pace, guiding it along the center line of the corridor to ensure even coverage. The polishing pads made a low, steady hum as they worked. The freshly buffed floor gleamed under the overhead lights, reflecting the ceiling panels and corridor walls in sharp detail. I was approximately halfway down the corridor when I noticed movement in the polished floor ahead of me. The reflection showed a figure walking in the same direction I was traveling, maintaining a consistent distance ahead. I stopped the burnisher and looked up. The corridor was empty. I resumed polishing, assuming the reflection was caused by an optical artifact from the lighting and the highly reflective floor surface. I had worked with polished floors for 8 years and was familiar with the strange visual effects they sometimes produced. Mirrors and reflective surfaces distorted perspectives, created false images, and occasionally produced unsettling illusions. The figure in the reflection continued moving. It appeared to be walking at the same pace as my burnisher, staying approximately 20 feet ahead. The reflection was distinct enough to show a human form but lacked detail. No clothing texture, no facial features, just a silhouette moving steadily forward. I stopped the burnisher again and walked ahead to inspect the corridor. I checked each patient room door, confirming they were closed. I looked for any object or feature that might cast a human-shaped shadow or reflection. I found nothing. The corridor was empty, well lit, and free of obstructions. I returned to the burnisher and continued working. The figure remained in the reflection, maintaining the same distance ahead. I focused on my work, guiding the machine along the center line and monitoring the polish quality. The reflection stayed ahead of me until I reached the end of the corridor. When I turned the burnisher to begin the return pass, the figure was no longer visible. I completed the east corridor without further incident and moved to the next section of my route. I mentioned the reflection to the overnight facility supervisor during my scheduled radio check at 1:45 a.m. The supervisor, a man named Kenneth Briggs who had worked hospital operations for 14 years, asked if I had seen anyone in the corridor physically. I told him the corridor had been empty. He said the reflection was likely a visual artifact and advised me to continue my work. I acknowledged his instruction and proceeded with my route. The following night, I polished the third-floor east corridor at the same time, 11:32 p.m. The figure appeared in the reflection again, walking ahead of me at the same consistent distance. This time, I paid closer attention to its behavior. The figure's stride matched the burnisher's speed precisely. When I slowed the machine, the figure slowed. When I accelerated, the figure moved faster. The correlation was exact. I stopped the burnisher completely. The figure in the reflection stopped as well. I waited, observing. The figure remained stationary approximately 20 feet ahead, visible only in the polished floor. I looked up at the corridor. Empty. I resumed polishing. The figure resumed walking. I completed the corridor and continued my route. The figure did not appear in any other section of the hospital. On the third night, I decided to document the phenomenon. I brought a small video camera from home and mounted it on the burnisher's control panel, angling it downward to record the floor surface as I worked. I began polishing the third-floor east corridor at 11:34 p.m. The figure appeared in the reflection as expected. I completed the corridor, stopped the burnisher, and reviewed the video footage immediately. The recording showed the polished floor, the overhead lighting reflections, and the corridor walls mirrored in the glossy surface. The figure was visible in the footage, walking ahead of the burnisher, maintaining the same distance and matching the machine's speed. I replayed the footage several times. The figure was clear, consistent, and present throughout the entire East Corridor segment. The timestamp matched my work schedule. The recording provided indisputable evidence that something was being reflected in the polished floor. I showed the footage to Kenneth during my next radio check. He watched the video on my camera's small screen, his expression neutral. "That's unusual," he said. I asked what could cause a reflection without a source. Kenneth handed the camera back to me. "I don't know," he said. "But the floor looks good. Your polish quality is excellent." I asked if he wanted me to investigate further. Kenneth shook his head. If it's not interfering with your work, there's no issue. Keep your route on schedule. I continued polishing the east corridor each night. The figure appeared consistently, always ahead of me, always matching my speed. I stopped recording it. The phenomenon became routine, an expected part of my nightly work. In late December, I noticed a change. The figure in the reflection was no longer ahead of me, it was behind me. I first observed this on December 22nd at 11:39 p.m. I was polishing the east corridor as usual when I glanced back at the section I had already completed. The figure was visible in the polished floor behind me, walking in the same direction, following approximately 15 feet behind the burnisher. I stopped the machine and turned to look back. The corridor behind me was empty. I resumed polishing, checking the reflection periodically. The figure remained behind me, maintaining a consistent distance matching my speed. Over the next week, the figure's position shifted gradually. It started 15 feet behind me, then 12 feet, then 9. By the end of December, the figure was directly behind the burnisher, visible in the reflection immediately adjacent to the machine's rear wheels. I reported this to Kenneth during a shift briefing. He listened, then asked if the figure had interfered with my equipment or work quality. I told him it had not. He nodded. Then continue your route. If the situation changes, let me know. The situation changed on January 7th. I was polishing the third floor east corridor at 11:41 p.m. The figure was directly behind the burnisher, visible in the reflection beneath the machine. As I guided the equipment forward, I noticed the figure was no longer matching my movements precisely. It was moving slightly slower, creating a growing gap between its position and the burnisher's rear wheels. I reduced my speed to match the figure's pace. The burnisher slowed. The figure continued moving at its original slower speed. I was now outpacing the reflection. I stopped the burnisher and looked back at the polished floor. The figure was visible approximately 6 feet behind me, standing still. I watched it for 37 seconds according to my watch. The figure did not move. I resumed polishing at a reduced speed. The figure began walking again but continued moving slower than the burnisher. The gap between us widened. By the time I reached the end of the corridor, the figure was 43 feet behind me. I turned the burnisher to begin the return pass. The figure was still in the same position, standing motionless in the polished floor. As I approached it on the return pass, the figure did not move. I polished directly over the section of floor where the reflection stood. The figure remained visible beneath the burnisher as I passed over it. I watched through the machine's transparent guard panels. The figure was underneath the polishing pads, unaffected by the spinning diamond-impregnated surfaces rotating at 3,000 revolutions per minute. I completed the return pass. The figure was now ahead of me again, positioned near the center of the corridor, standing still. I stopped the burnisher and dismounted. I walked to the location where the figure's reflection appeared. I knelt and examined the floor closely. The polish was perfect. The floor reflected the ceiling, the walls, and my own image kneeling on the surface. The figure was also reflected, standing beside my reflection, facing the same direction. I stood up and looked around. The corridor was empty except for me. I looked down at the floor. The figure's reflection remained beside my own. I walked back to the burnisher. The figure's reflection did not follow. It stayed in place, standing alone in the center of the polished corridor. I completed my shift and reported the incident to Kenneth. He reviewed my work log and confirmed the third floor east corridor had been polished according to schedule. "Did the reflection interfere with your work quality?" he asked. I told him it had not. He closed his computer. "Then continue your regular route tomorrow." I polished the third floor east corridor the next night. The figure was standing in the same location where I had left it, visible in the polished floor near the center of the corridor. It did not move as I worked around it. It remained stationary throughout my entire shift. The figure is still there. I polish the East Corridor 5 nights a week. The figure stands in the same position, reflected in the floor, unmoving. I work around it, maintaining the polish quality on all sections of the corridor. Kenneth inspected my work last week. He walked the entire East Corridor, examining the floor finish. He stopped at the location where the figure's reflection stands and knelt to inspect the surface. "Excellent work," he said. "This is some of the best polishing in the hospital." I thanked him. He stood up and continued his inspection. He walked directly over the figure's reflection without acknowledging it. This morning I reviewed archived maintenance footage from the 3rd floor East Corridor. The hospital's security system records all hallways for safety and liability purposes. I requested access to footage from December through January, focusing on overnight hours when I was polishing. The footage shows me operating the burnisher, moving methodically through the corridor. The camera angle is elevated, mounted near the ceiling, providing a clear view of the entire corridor length. The polished floor is visible, reflecting the overhead lights. The figure is present in the footage. It appears in the reflection, walking ahead of the burnisher, then behind it, then lagging, then stopping. The footage documents the entire progression I witnessed. The figure's reflection is recorded by the security camera, archived as primary visual data. I submitted a report to Kenneth, including timestamps and footage references. He reviewed the materials and called me into his office this afternoon. "The security footage confirms your floor polishing activity," he said. "Your work is thorough and consistent." I asked about the figure in the reflection. Kenneth looked at his computer screen. "The footage shows you performing your duties," he said. "That's all the archive needs to document." Some reflections record movement that finishes before you do, and the only proof you need is footage that confirms something was always there, waiting for the floor to be polished enough to see it clearly. Story 7, the janitor listed as environmental hazard. I worked environmental services maintenance for the hospital for 12 years before my name appeared in a risk assessment document I was never supposed to read. The document was left on a printer in the facilities management office, 3 pages clipped together, marked with a date stamp from 2 days prior. I was retrieving my own requisition forms when I noticed the document sitting in the output tray, unattended. The header read, "Quarterly Environmental Risk Assessment, Building 7, Floors 1 through 5. Building 7 was the main hospital tower where I had worked my entire tenure. The document listed various environmental hazards identified during routine safety inspections: asbestos in ceiling tiles, lead paint in stairwells, biological waste storage areas, chemical cleaning agents, and 1 entry under non-biological environmental threats that included my full name and employee identification number. I read the entry twice to confirm what I was seeing. My name was categorized between airborne particulate matter exceeding threshold limits and unshielded electrical infrastructure. The entry included my assigned work areas, my shift schedule, and a notation indicating automated ventilation adjustment recommended upon detection. I made a photocopy of the document, returned the original to the printer tray, and brought the copy back to my workstation in the custodial supply room. I sat at the small desk where I completed shift reports and examined the risk assessment again. The non-biological environmental threats section was typically reserved for structural hazards, chemical exposures, and equipment malfunctions. Human personnel were never classified as environmental threats. Job-related injuries were documented separately in occupational safety reports. This document listed me alongside inanimate hazards as though my presence constituted a measurable environmental risk. I checked the document's distribution list. It had been generated by the hospital's automated building management system and sent to the facility's director, the environmental health officer, and the occupational safety committee. The assessment was part of a quarterly reporting cycle required by health department regulations. I decided to address the matter directly. I contacted the environmental health officer, a woman named Dr. Janet Whitmore, who had held the position for 6 years. Her office was located on the administrative floor. I called her extension and explained that I needed to discuss the quarterly risk assessment. She scheduled an appointment for the following afternoon. Dr. Whitmore's office was organized and austere, with filing cabinets along one wall and a large monitor displaying building management system data. I sat across from her desk and presented my photocopy of the risk assessment. She examined it, her expression neutral. "I see you found the quarterly report," she said. I asked why my name was listed under environmental threats. Dr. Whitmore pulled up the risk assessment on her computer and scrolled to the relevant section. "The building management system generates these reports automatically," she said. "It monitors environmental conditions, identifies potential hazards, and categorizes them according to established parameters." I asked what parameter classified me as a hazard. Dr. Whitmore highlighted the entry on her screen. "The system detected an anomaly associated with your employee identification number," she said. "Specifically, automated ventilation adjustments correlating with your movement through the building." I asked what kind of ventilation adjustments. Dr. Whitmore opened a secondary monitoring window showing real-time air quality data. "When you enter a room, the ventilation system increases airflow to that room by an average of 18%, she said. "When you leave, the airflow returns to baseline within 4 to 6 minutes. I asked if this was a malfunction. Dr. Whitmore shook her head. "The system is functioning correctly. It's responding to environmental data. The question is why your presence triggers a ventilation response typically reserved for contamination events." I asked what environmental data the system was detecting. Dr. Whitmore pulled up a technical log showing sensor readings from various hospital zones. She filtered the data by my employee ID badge, which transmitted my location throughout the building. "The sensors detect an air quality deviation when you're present," she said. "Nothing dramatic but measurable. Particulate density increases slightly, humidity shifts, and temperature drops by 0.3 degrees Celsius on average." I told her I was not aware of any condition that would cause these changes. Dr. Whitmore closed the log. "Neither am I," she said. "I've reviewed your employment health records. No respiratory conditions, no chemical sensitivities, no documented exposures. You're medically cleared for your work." I asked why the system classified me as a threat. Dr. Whitmore leaned back in her chair. "The building management system doesn't assess intent or causation," she said. "It identifies environmental changes and categorizes them as hazards if they deviate from acceptable ranges. Your presence creates measurable deviations, so the system lists you as an environmental factor requiring monitoring." I asked what the recommended course of action was. Dr. Whitmore returned to the risk assessment document. "Automated ventilation adjustment upon detection," she read. "The system is already implementing this. When you enter a room, airflow increases. The adjustment is preventive, ensuring air quality remains within safe limits." I asked if this meant I was contaminating the rooms I entered. Dr. Whitmore shook her head again. "The system isn't detecting contamination. It's detecting change. Whether that change poses an actual risk is unclear. The ventilation adjustments are precautionary." I thanked Dr. Whitmore for her time and left her office. I returned to my custodial duties, but I began paying attention to ventilation patterns as I worked. I noticed the subtle increase in air movement when I entered storage closets, patient rooms, and corridors. The change was quiet, almost imperceptible, but once I was aware of it, I could identify it consistently. Over the following weeks, I reviewed archived building management logs. I requested access through the facilities department, explaining I wanted to understand maintenance patterns better. The logs went back 3 years. I filtered them by my employee ID. The ventilation adjustments had been occurring for 11 months. They began in February of the previous year, escalating gradually from a 12% increase in airflow to the current 18%. The system had flagged the pattern internally but had not generated an external alert until the quarterly risk assessment. I examined the logs for the period before the ventilation adjustments began. My employee ID appeared regularly, tracking my movement through the building as expected. Air quality readings showed normal baseline values. No deviations, no automated responses. Something had changed in February. I reviewed my work logs from that month, searching for any incident or exposure that might explain the shift. I found nothing unusual. Standard custodial tasks, routine cleaning schedules, no accidents or spills. I decided to isolate the variable. I requested a temporary reassignment to a different building, Building 4, which housed outpatient clinics and administrative offices. My supervisor, a man named Roger Lindell, approved the reassignment for 1 week, citing staffing flexibility. I worked Building 4 for 5 consecutive shifts. I monitored ventilation patterns as I moved through the clinic spaces. No automated adjustments occurred. Air quality remained stable. The building management system did not register any environmental changes associated with my presence. I returned to Building 7. Within the first hour of my shift, ventilation adjustments resumed. I entered a supply closet on the 2nd floor and airflow increased by 17% within 90 seconds. I moved to a patient corridor on the 3rd floor and airflow increased by 19%. I reported my findings to Dr. Whitmore. She reviewed the data from both buildings and confirmed the pattern. The ventilation response is specific to Building 7, she said. Whatever the system is detecting, it's localized to this facility. I asked if the building itself could be causing the environmental changes. Dr. Whitmore considered the question. Possible, she said. Older buildings accumulate environmental factors, residual chemicals, biological deposits, structural degradation. Your presence might be interacting with something already present here. She scheduled an environmental survey of Building 7, focusing on areas where I worked regularly. A team of industrial hygienists conducted air sampling, surface testing, and structural inspections over 3 days. The results showed no unusual contaminants, no hidden mold growth, no chemical residues. Building 7's environmental profile was within normal parameters. Dr. Whitmore called me back to her office after the survey was completed. She handed me a summary report. The building is clean, she said. No identifiable environmental factors that would explain the ventilation response. I asked what the next step was. Dr. Whitmore pulled up the latest risk assessment on her monitor. The system has updated your classification, she said. She turned the screen toward me. My entry under non-biological environmental threats now included an additional notation. Containment protocols recommended. I asked what containment protocols meant. Dr. Whitmore scrolled through a technical specifications document. Increased ventilation, negative air pressure in work areas, and restricted access to high-sensitivity zones, she said. The system is recommending we treat your presence the way we would treat a low-level contamination event. I asked if I was being reassigned. Dr. Whitmore shook her head. Not reassigned, monitored. The building management system will continue adjusting environmental controls based on your location. The containment protocols are automated. You won't notice any operational difference. I asked if I was a risk to other staff or patients. Dr. Whitmore met my eyes directly. There's no evidence you pose a risk, she said. The system is responding to data, not danger. You're cleared to continue working. I returned to my duties. The ventilation adjustments continued. I became accustomed to the subtle increase in airflow, the quiet hum of fans accelerating when I entered a room. The building management system tracked me continuously, adjusting environmental controls in real time. Last month, I reviewed the most recent quarterly risk assessment. My entry under non-biological environmental threats had been updated again. The new notation read, "Containment achieved. Reassignment not required." I showed the document to Dr. Whitmore during a follow-up meeting. She confirmed the updated classification. "The system has stabilized," she said. "Ventilation adjustments are consistent and effective. From the building management perspective, you're being successfully contained." I asked what I was being contained from. Dr. Whitmore closed the document on her screen. "The system doesn't specify," she said. "It only confirms that containment protocols are functioning as designed." I asked if she believed I posed an actual environmental threat. Dr. Whitmore was silent for a long moment. "I believe the building management system is responding to something measurable," she said. "Whether that something is you or something interacting with you, or something the building itself is reacting to, I cannot determine. But the system's containment protocols are effective and no adverse events have occurred." I thanked her and left her office. I still work Building 7. The ventilation system still adjusts when I enter a room. The building management system still tracks my location and implements automated containment protocols. My name remains listed under environmental threats and quarterly risk assessments, categorized alongside structural hazards and chemical exposures. Yesterday, I noticed a new pattern. When I leave a room after completing my work, the ventilation system does not return to baseline immediately. It remains elevated for progressively longer periods. Last week, the delay was 6 minutes. Yesterday, it was 14 minutes. The building is containing something. I am still working. The system has not recommended my removal. Some workplaces document your presence as a hazard long before they decide whether you should leave. And the only proof you need is a ventilation log that says the air needed to change whenever you arrived.